Hey, Today All Day. Welcome to Today Talks. I'm Sheinelle Jones in for Jenna Bush Hager, and we have a great show for you. Carson Daly brings us pop star. The star of Bridgerton shares a new kind of bedtime project. Plus, Kanye West brings part of his childhood to a Chicago stadium. Take a look.
The crowd goes wild for pop star.
I mean,
the crowd goes wild.
Al continues to be the Flavor Flav to my Chuck D, and I appreciate it every single time, Al. Thank you. First up, Regé-Jean Page. How would you like it if the smooth-sounding voice of the Duke just puts you to sleep every single night? Well, if that's your dream, you're in luck, because the Bridgerton star is the latest celebrity to lend his soothing voice to the Calm Meditation and Sleep app. Page narrates the sleep story titled The Prince and the Naturalist. Here's a little bit, but don't fall asleep.
My name is Regé-Jean Page. Tonight, I'll be accompanying you as we travel back through time to Old England. We'll join a naturalist on a perfect English summer afternoon as he makes his way to the country retreat of a royal family.
You guys use the Calm app?
I'm actually quite
That thing is amazing. It
I
is.
bet you are quite engaged.
And The Naturalist. Be sure and check that out. Regé-Jean Page is available on the Calm app now. Use that Calm app every single day. Love it. It's Mary Levitt. Shout out. All right, next up, Kanye West, one of the biggest names in music, might be getting a little bit shorter. On Tuesday, the rap star filed for documents in L.A. Superior Court to legally change his name from Kanye Omari West to simply Ye, citing personal reasons for the request. The two-letter nickname is also the title of his 2018 album, but in order for Kanye to join the club of other one-name superstars like Cher or Bono or Beyonce
Carson.
or, yes,
Carson.
Shaq,
Oprah.
he is going to have a judge sign off on the change for it to become official. Meanwhile, the singer prepares for the release of his 10th studio album, Donda, of course, in honor of his late mother who passed in 2007. On Thursday, he's headed back to his hometown for another listening event of the upcoming project. There's been a couple, and get this, Ye is holding the concert in a replica of his childhood home that he's rebuilding right in the middle of Chicago's Soldier Field.
Wow.
Donda expected to be released sometime later this month. Next up, No Time to Die. James Bond fans have been waiting a long time, more than a year, to see the sequel that's been the unfortunate victim to the COVID box office, but the film's release date pushed back several times since the initial 2020 expectation. Well, we finally have some good news. At a CinemaCon presentation on Tuesday, the studio behind the film finally confirming they're going to keep the current release date this time around. So come October 8th, Uncle Al, you can expect to see Daniel Craig pulling off some insane 007 stunts like this.
Why would I betray you?
We all have our secrets. We just didn't get to yours yet.
I need to see that. I don't want to see that at home, though. I don't want to watch that streaming. That's when I got to go to a theater and see.
And it's going to be his last one, right?
I like
That's what they're saying, right?
See.
Okay.
Welcome back. Today on the third hour, Olympian and Dr. Lenny Wade joins us to share her tips on manifesting a healthy mindset, especially when things get tough. Check it out.
This morning, we are going to try to put you in the right frame of mind. With school starting and some offices reopening, a lot of people are certainly feeling anxious.
So here to help us manifest a healthy mindset during this time of change is sports psychology consultant Dr. Lenny Wade. She's worked with Olympic athletes on their mental fitness, and this morning she is sharing her expertise with all of us. Good morning to you.
Good morning. It's so great to be here this morning.
Well, let's dig in here. A lot of people are anxious about heading back to work or school, the office. You have a visualization tool that we can all do. Can you talk about how that works?
Yeah, visualization is a really great technique and something that I use with my Olympic athletes a lot. So in the build up to Tokyo, I would have them do things like, what's it like to wake up in the morning in the Olympic Village? What's it like to walk to the bus, go to that competition venue? Go through some really simple actions that are within their control. And I think the same people can use that technique in going back to work or going back to school, and just thinking about really simple action. Making sure not to latch on to worst case scenarios or negative events, especially when there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, a lot of what
and
if
maybe
this
some
and
anxiety.
what if that, yes.
Yeah. And really just, latching on to what they can do and elements that they can control in that high pressure, maybe uncertain, slightly anxiety producing situation.
You know, there's a lot of people who are feeling the pressure now to get back into their social life, get back into a work life, but they're still really anxious about the pandemic. So what advice do you have for them?
I think everybody's reemergence from the pandemic is going to look different. And one thing that I'd like to remind people is even pre-pandemic, everybody had these big individual differences. Some people were super social and loved to go to music events, loved to go to concerts. Other people, you know, they like to keep to themselves and do those smaller social interactions with a close friend. And I think reemergence is just focusing on what works for you. Are you that type of person that wants to get back out there to those concerts as soon as possible? Or is your next step just a dinner with a close friend? And to not set these expectations for everything to be so normal and everybody to react the same, because our individual differences are really huge in how we respond to these uncertain events.
We just heard, Dylan and I were talking during the commercial break, Renee Lee Scolsberry talk about how she was nervous in Hamilton before her big number. I think of athletes who you've trained when they have a big moment, the pressure is on, they've been training for forever. Can you give some advice to the rest of us? Let's say you have a big exam or a big interview. What kind of things we can do to get into the right headspace so that our nerves don't, take over?
Yeah, that's such a great point. The first step when I'm working with individuals is to get to know yourself. And so there are a few questions to ask. So in general, are you a type of person who you fill your battery when you have your time alone? Or are you a type of person more like an extrovert who really needs people around you? Is that something that really helps you feel in that high performance mindset? Then just thinking historically, are you a type of person who really thrives under pressure? Do you love being in the spotlight, being a kind of in the moment performer? Or historically, have you sort of struggled in these high pressure, higher intensity events? And then lastly, are you super ambitious and kind of a go-getter to the point where you need people to kind of hold the reins back when you're approaching this big exam or big performance? Or do you need a little bit of coaching, a little bit of extra motivation to the start line? And once you know those things about yourself, it's easier to set up an environment to support you. You can create that infrastructure that's going to allow you to perform best in high pressure, and that looks a little bit different for everybody.
Now, that's good advice. If you have a big presentation or a big interview and you don't need a lot of people around, then before you have your big moment, go away, take yourself out of the spot.
Do
that's
what you need to do.
Lenny Wade, thank you so much for your advice.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
It is time now for our series, Mind Matters. And we've got Carson here to share the story of a man who's starting an important conversation on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's so great. We do this Mind Matters digitally, but to come here in the 9 o'clock hour to share it with everybody is so great. Thank you for having me. It's Christopher Lamarck. He launched his nonprofit organization, love the title, had me at hello, Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health. He launched it in 2018. They've got a coffee shop that funds mental health services for individuals in need with hip-hop inspired drinks and a strong desire to normalize therapy.
We want to normalize talking about hard stuff so we can be on the road to healing. Fair enough? Fair enough. Fair.
Christopher Lamarck cares for his Chicago community as he knows firsthand how it feels to not be cared for.
I was abandoned and abused for a span of 12 years. Essentially, like the first 30 years of my life was super traumatic. I spent a lot of years being extremely lonely.
But you made it out.
Yeah, I definitely made it out, and I'm super proud of that. And that's why I say healing is a marathon, man. You can't rush this.
In October 2018, Christopher experienced what he calls a breakdown at a coffee shop.
And I just started crying uncontrollably. I just couldn't stop. And so I went to therapy. After some challenging sessions, my therapist sat up in his seat and he said, it wasn't your fault that you were abused. And for the first time, I heard it because I had been feeling like it was my fault, right? Because that's what happens. It's so much shame that comes with being abused.
As Christopher worked to heal his own trauma, he felt called to help others do the same.
I went home one day and I wrote down 3 words. I wrote down coffee because of the mental and emotional breakdown happened inside of a coffee shop. And then hip hop. Hip hop saved my life from committing suicide. It was my first form of therapy. And mental health because in my community, we're taught to survive. And we wasn't talking about it, so I wanted to normalize this conversation.
And with that, the nonprofit organization Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health was born.
What's on your menu? You've got some funky coffee names?
Yes, so we got the Beehive, which is a honey lavender latte. paying homage like to Beyonce. And then we have the Diddy, which is a cold brew with a shot of espresso and some butter pecan.
Yep.
So
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. And the Queen Latifah chai. So many things to pay homage to the incredible artists that built this hip hop.
Can I get a little side of warm meek milk in my Diddy?
You know what? You absolutely can.
But at this coffee shop, every hip-hop inspired drink goes to free therapy sessions for individuals in need, like Chicago public school teacher Faith Overall.
If I had to pay out of pocket, chances were I was just going to have to skip out on therapy, right? So if we have to choose between what's going to provide a roof over our head and what's going to help us to navigate life, we're kind of conditioned to provide the roof over our heads instead. And so having access to free therapy gave me the opportunity to actually get to what I needed to get to. Being an educator, I think that you can talk to anyone and they have a story about a teacher that harmed them. And chances are that's because that teacher themselves was unhealed. So if I heal myself, I have the opportunity to heal my students.
Why do you think it's so difficult to break the stigma of normalizing therapy, communicating, and talking about your issues in certain areas? Why is it so hard?
So when you think about going to therapy, it's almost like an uncomfortable thing. Why are you going to therapy? What's wrong with you? Because we share that language, that misinformation, not having a proper understanding, people are afraid to be ultimately vulnerable. I want to tell people that it's probably one of the most beautiful things you can do for yourself, and it's actually very strong to be vulnerable, to own your emotions.
And with Christopher's help, this community is starting to do just that.
I tell people all the time, healing is the new cool. That is the new cool. And we just have to keep saying that over and over again, and that's how you re-change the narrative.
It's incredible what Christopher's doing. I've been begging him to run for office or something in Chicago. He's incredible. But listen, one of the biggest problems we're seeing in the mental health space in the country is, well, even if you do break the stigma, even if you do convince people to start talking, especially in communities of color, the therapy's not there. The access just isn't. It's just not there. Sure. That puts such an extra thanks to Chris Lamarck and people like that who are opening up coffee shops like this, a place for people to go.
That's a really good point.
What a great template for something to happen all across the country.
Well, it is a great template. Hey, we should mention the coffee shop is planning on moving locations in Chicago in mid-September. They're currently looking for a permanent spot on the north side of Chicago. But here's what you can do. You go to the website. You can find out more. You can watch our Mind Matters series there. They're all there at today.com, Mind Matters. And shout out to Christopher Lamarck. You're the man. Thank you for doing all that you're doing.
Healing is the new cool.
Yeah.
I like
Healing
that.
is a marathon.
Yes.
That was the best thing he said.
Love
That
that.
was incredible. Great story, Carson.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Today on Hoda and Jenna, we are focusing on your health. Dr. Natalie Azar gives us insights on what 7 symptoms to never ignore before seeing a doctor. Plus, what you need to know about supplements and vitamins. All that and more next.
As women, we tend to put everyone else's health before our own, so we sat down once again with our medical contributor, Dr. Natalie Azar, to talk about the symptoms and screenings we all should be aware of. Take a look. We know that it's important to go for an annual visit, which some of us don't do and need to, but there are also signs that we cannot ignore.
Right.
What are those?
Yeah, so here's a short list of 7 symptoms that I like to tell people never to ignore, and those are unintended weight loss, unexplained fever or night sweats, any new or suspicious or changing mole, any sudden weakness in an arm or a leg, or frankly visual symptoms or slurred speech. Obviously, you know where I'm going with that. Profound new fatigue, certainly any chest pain, and then extreme sadness. And on second thought, we might have wanted to put that first. I think we very often concentrate so much on physical symptoms that we often overlook something as straightforward and common and important as symptoms of depression.
That's right.
Good.
All right, let's go through some of the screening tests that we should be getting. Cervical cancer screening. That's, I don't know if that's one that's top of everyone's list, but tell us.
Yes. Okay. So the guidelines here are that for women between the ages of 21 to 29, the preferred screening is a pap smear every 3 years. From the age of 30 to 65, you can continue to do a pap smear every 3 years, or you can opt to do a pap plus an HPV every 5 years, or just an HPV test every 5 years as well.
Okay, let's talk about breast scans or mammograms. There's actually some kind of nuances here that make it confusing, but give us the bottom line.
Yeah, so I would say, guys, that mammography and screening for breast cancer is probably the screening test for the adage of one size does not fit all is most apt. And that is because if you look at the CDC website, you will see 7 or 8 different organizations, including the American Cancer Society, the American College of Radiology, the United States Preventive Services Task Force. They all have different recommendations when it comes to what age to start, how frequently you should do them, and when you need to stop doing mammograms. So what I say to folks is this. Of all the screening tests, this is where shared decision-making becomes the most important thing. Every single woman is different, really, in terms of her risk factor for breast cancer. So when you start, how frequently you do it, and how long you do it is really a very, very individual decision that a woman needs to make with her doctor.
Real quick, though, when should you start? When should you get your first one?
Well, that actually, the starting age is one of the things that's kind of like, you know, disagreed upon. I say 40. I agree with the American Cancer Society, and then at least a baseline at 40, and then after that, it's kind of up for grabs.
Let's move on.
Let's talk about colon cancer screening. Give us the guidelines.
So in the last couple of years, we've done lots of shows on this. You guys know that the incidence of colorectal cancer early onset before the age of 50 has been rising dramatically in this country. And for that reason, the American Cancer Society has made a recommendation to shift screening instead of starting at age 50 to start at age 45. Now, screening can include either like a stool-based test that tests for you know, a genetic predisposition to colon cancer, blood in the stool, or a visual-based test, the colonoscopy. What you choose to do and how frequently you do them is a decision, again, that you make with your doc. But for most of us who are at average risk, it's a colonoscopy every 10 years.
We have 10 seconds, but bone density, should people run and get that, and what age?
So basically, if you're otherwise healthy and have no risk factors for osteoporosis, the recommendation is to start screening at 65. If you're under age 65 and postmenopausal and you have reasons to have a low bone density, like on steroids or things like that, you definitely can start screening earlier.
If you're like millions of Americans, you probably take vitamins and supplements as part of your daily routine, but are they always the best route to better health?
We needed some info, so we asked NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar to share the latest on 3 popular supplements and whether they're right for everyone. Take a look.
We're going to get to it all, but do you think supplements are actually necessary? I mean, because I think some people wonder, should we take them at all?
Oh, wow. Yeah. You know what, Hoda, my bottom line on this really is that if you have a well-balanced diet, you probably don't need to take any supplements, let's say in tablet or capsule form, unless you have a real nutritional deficiency where you do need to replete that. So a healthy diet is really what most people still recommend.
Okay, I think that's probably good information. And then if we do need them for whatever reason, does it matter the form in which we take them? Gummy, pill, whatever, any of those drops?
Right. You know, generally something that's chewable like a gummy will enter the bloodstream a little bit faster. So that's definitely something to consider as opposed to a capsule where you're going to have like delayed release. Definitely a good question, Jenna.
A lot of people having trouble sleeping, and they say melatonin's their best bet. Everyone says it's natural. It's natural. Is it a good idea to take melatonin?
Well, see, here's the thing, Hoda. It is natural. It is a hormone that a little gland in the brain actually does secrete. And it initiates sleep. It also regulates your circadian rhythm. So basically, once the light from the outside starts to go down and it gets dark, your brain naturally starts to secrete melatonin. The issue is whether or not, if you're having trouble sleeping, whether taking melatonin as a supplement is actually works or is actually a good idea. Definitely for people with circadian rhythm disorders and jet lag, and some people, as we get older and have trouble falling asleep, it might help to sort of delay that time to initiate sleep. But whether or not it actually gives you like a full, restful, quality sleep, that still remains to be determined. And I wouldn't recommend it, you know, lifelong. I think for the short term, it's definitely something that you can take.
Yeah, and Natalie, I think that's a good point, because I think we see these gummies for children, these melatonin, and I read an article somewhere that said if you're giving them melatonin, then their brain thinks they don't need to make it. Is there any truth to that?
Well, that's the thing always, Jenna, and I know like there's a whole literature on pediatric use of melatonin. But generally speaking, the principle is, yes, if you're giving yourself something exogenous and your own body doesn't think it needs to manufacture it anymore, is there a concern? There's definitely guidance from pediatricians on melatonin use in children, but it's something to obviously be very much aware of. And also, if you take too much, you can have side effects. You can have daytime drowsiness, dizziness, even headaches. And, we talk about these supplements. They are still kind of like pharmaceuticals, and melatonin especially can have a lot of drug interactions. Yeah. So you do need to let your doctor know that you're taking it and make sure that there aren't any interactions with any medications that you're taking.
Let's move on to collagen. I mean, that sounds like something that we need. I know our body makes that. So should we be taking a supplement? And tell us about that.
I know, Hoda. So here's the thing. Gosh, if it were the fountain of youth, right, we wouldn't even need to be having this conversation. But so you think of collagen as the most abundant protein in the body, and it basically forms the connective tissue that supports your skin and your tendons and your bones and all of that stuff. Because of that, there is a theory or hypothesis that maybe it could actually help alleviate joint pain, or it could improve skin's elasticity. And there is some research to suggest that this, potentially is the case. You can get it in powder, capsule, and liquid form, and it's also available in foods. I'm sure you guys have heard of people doing animal or fish broth. You can also do protein sources like beef and poultry, but it's not clear that the collagen you consume in food actually gets to the collagen in your body. So I think the jury's still out as to whether or not just taking collagen supplements are all of a sudden going to, make us smoother and everything. But you can certainly give it a try.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Natalie, but we only have a second left. Talk about biotin.
Oh, no. Quickly. Oh my gosh, biotin. Really, really important vitamin for your nervous system, for your skin, helps metabolism. A lot of people take it to help their hair and their nails get stronger and fuller. I have to say that the research on that isn't compelling, but a lot of patients say that they do notice improvements when they take it. So just do it again with the guidance of your healthcare provider.
And I think one of the things that makes me feel better, is when you can really, forgive someone. You kiss it, and today happens to be National Kiss and Makeup Day. Yeah.
Kiss and Makeup Day. Yeah.
Because you have to do it.
And I think there when you do get into arguments with whoever it is, your partner, your spouse, a friend, it weighs on you so much.
It does. I remember we had Joanna Gaines on, Chip and Joanna Gaines, a few weeks ago, and one of the things they said, which stuck with me, was that when you are in an argument, instead of pulling apart from each other, because here's the argument, and then you go back to your corner, you get madder and madder and madder, they said, come together and make the argument, put the argument on the table. That's the thing you're both fighting. Whatever this issue
bad
is.
Communication versus the two of you.
Yeah, you don't, but I think it's doing that, and also standing in the middle. Like when your partner says something like, I don't like the way you do X. To be able to stand in it.
And let it.
And just listen before you go, well, I don't do that because that's my defense.
Me too.
What do you mean? It's like, okay, well, that person's not going to say that business anymore.
Or just to listen more, right? I mean, it's so funny because I think when you talk with a lot of people that have been happily married, their advice, my grandparents always said, don't go to bed angry.
Don't go to bed angry.
And then you feel kind of guilty when you do, right?
Because we're not perfect.
No.
But I do think that that's a good sort of rule of thumb. And I think, and I know this from my relationship too, if you don't talk about it for the first day because you think it's nothing and you'll sweep it under the carpet, it was a nothing. We don't have to make a big deal out of anything. Then it's the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day, and then another little something happens and you sweep it under. And pretty soon, it's going to come to a head. Yeah, maybe you should have talked about it when it was little.
I know.
And instead, we just let it go on and on.
But you know what it does? What's right is because, this has happened to me recently. Henry and I got into an argument. Yeah. I kind of thought he was wrong, but I woke up in the morning and I wrote and I said, I'm so sorry. I love you. Even if you're not the one
who's wrong. Because he was definitely wrong.
Because it was him. But I kissed and made up.
But I do think that's an important thing to do.
Right. Apologizing is it.
Yeah.
Guts, but also it makes you feel better.